Hello guys, welcome to my channel where stories filled with revenge, moral lessons, and love are told. If you enjoy stories that make you think, feel, and sometimes even cry, then you're in the right place. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you never miss another powerful tale. I still remember the day the envelope arrived. It was a cream-colored wedding invitation with gold lettering, delicate flowers embossed along the edges, and a ribbon tied neatly at the center. The handwriting on the envelope was unmistakable. It was my sister, Claire. For a moment, my heart warmed. We'd grown up inseparable, almost like twins despite the 3-year gap. We'd been through heartbreaks, bad haircuts, questionable boyfriends, and even tougher moments like the death of our dad. Claire was my best friend, my sister, and, for many years, the person I'd turn to first for everything. I tore open the envelope, already imagining Hannah's reaction. My daughter, 15 years old, adored her Aunt Claire. She'd been talking about this wedding for months, what she'd wear, how she'd do her hair, and how much she'd dance. She idolized Claire in a way that only a niece who's been showered with affection can. But as I scanned the card, my smile slowly faded. The words adults only sat at the bottom in small, italicized letters, a detail so sharp it felt like a paper cut. My chest tightened. At first, I thought it was some oversight. Maybe she meant toddlers or small children. Hannah was practically grown. But when I called Claire, the truth was worse than I imagined. Claire, I got the invitation, but it says adults only. That's not for Hannah, right? I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She hesitated for a moment. I'm sorry, Kate. It's for everyone under 18. Richard's family. They have this tradition. They believe weddings should be sophisticated, you know, more of a formal gathering without kids running around. His parents are very particular about appearances. The words landed like bricks. Claire, Hannah isn't a little kid. She's a young woman. And she's your niece. She's been looking forward to this for months. I know, Claire said, her tone strained. But Richard's family is traditional. They think teenagers are still children. They want the event to be elegant, and I have to respect their wishes. I could feel the anger bubbling inside me. So you're telling me your niece, who loves you more than anyone, isn't good enough to sit in a chair at your wedding because she's 15? It's not like that, she argued quickly. It's about the overall atmosphere. Please try to understand. Understand? I wanted to laugh. This was the same woman I once defended in high school when a group of girls spread nasty rumors about her. The same sister I stayed up all night with when her first boyfriend broke her heart. The same sister who, when my marriage crumbled and I felt like I was drowning, came over with wine and pizza and promised me I'd be okay. And now she was standing there, siding with people who barely knew her over the family who had loved her for her whole life. I hung up that call in a fog of disbelief. Hannah walked into the living room just then, her bright eyes searching mine. Was that Aunt Claire? Did we get the invitation? She asked. I opened my mouth, but the words got stuck. I didn't want to see her face crumble. But I couldn't lie to her. We got it, but there's something I need to tell you. They're not allowing anyone under 18. Her smile faltered instantly. So? I'm not going? I shook my head, feeling the ache in my chest deepen. She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw the hurt, the rejection, the sting of knowing someone you love has drawn a line you can't cross. She nodded slowly, trying to be strong. It's fine, she whispered. But I knew it wasn't fine. In the days that followed, my phone buzzed with messages from family members urging me to just go without her. It's one day, Kate, my mother said over the phone. Don't make a scene. Claire loves Hannah, but this is her wedding. Don't cause tension. Cause tension? As if the tension hadn't already been caused by excluding my daughter. As if showing up without Hannah wouldn't be its own silent betrayal. I lay awake night after night, turning it over in my head. Every memory of Claire holding Hannah as a baby, every laugh they'd shared, it all seemed to unravel in my mind. The final straw came when Richard himself called me. "Kate, I just wanted to make sure you're coming," he said in that polished, careful tone of his. "I haven't decided," I replied flatly. "Well, I hope you do. Claire really wants you there. And, if I'm being honest, this whole adults-only thing is a tradition my parents hold dear. It's about maintaining a certain standard." A standard. That word sat like acid in my stomach. "Richard, my daughter isn't a stain on your standard. She's a person. She's family." "I'm sure she is," he said smoothly, "but we want to avoid distractions. I hope you can respect that." Respect? No. What I could respect was my daughter's worth, and the lesson she needed to see from me that love doesn't come with conditions, and family doesn't bow to snobbery. That night, I told Hannah we weren't going. She looked at me with wide eyes. "Really?" "Really," I said, pulling her into a hug. "I'm not going anywhere you're not welcome. We'll make our own day. Something special. Better than any wedding." There was a flicker of relief in her face, mixed with something else, gratitude, maybe, or that rare feeling of being truly seen. As the wedding drew closer, my phone kept lighting up with calls from relatives, some pleading, some angry. I ignored most of them. I knew they saw this as me being dramatic, but they weren't the ones tucking in a 15-year-old girl who pretended not to care while secretly wondering why her own aunt didn't want her there. On the morning of the wedding, Hannah and I woke up early. We made pancakes in the kitchen, music playing in the background. She wore a sundress she loved, and we drove to the botanical gardens. We wandered for hours, laughing, taking silly photos, talking about everything from her school crush to my own awkward teenage years. Meanwhile, I knew Claire was walking down the aisle in some grand hall, surrounded by people in formal clothes, pretending everything was perfect. But I also knew perfection had a way of cracking when it was built on exclusion. By the time we got home that evening, my phone had several unread messages. One from my cousin: "Claire looked beautiful, but Richard's family was intense." Everyone was whispering about how cold they seemed. Another from my aunt: "You didn't miss much, trust me." I sat on the couch with Hannah, scrolling through the updates. I didn't feel triumphant, exactly, just sure. Sure that I'd made the right choice. Sure, protecting my daughter's dignity was worth more than keeping up appearances. What I didn't know yet was that this was only the beginning. Claire's choices and Richard's influence would keep testing the bonds of our family in ways I couldn't yet imagine. And Christmas would bring the real turning point. Christmas that year crept in with an icy chill, not just from the December air, but from the frost that had settled over my relationship with Claire. After the wedding, we didn't speak much. She sent me a polite thank you note for the gift I'd mailed, but it felt mechanical, stripped of the warmth that had once been the heartbeat of our sisterhood. I told myself it was fine. That I didn't need her validation. That Hannah and I had our own little world, and that was enough. But deep down, a part of me grieved the sister I thought I'd always have. In the weeks following the wedding, whispers from family gatherings reached me like little gusts of cold wind. Some cousins hinted that Richard's family had been overly critical of Claire during the reception, judging the floral arrangements, the food, even the venue she'd chosen. They called it quaint, my cousin Melissa told me one afternoon over coffee. And not in a nice way. I listened, a small knot forming in my stomach. I knew Claire valued elegance, but she also valued belonging. To see her surrounded by people who measured worth in cutlery and guest lists made me uneasy. Hannah, for her part, seemed to have moved on faster than I expected. Or maybe she was just good at hiding the hurt. She buried herself in schoolwork and started practicing guitar more often. Still, every so often I'd catch her scrolling through old photos of her and Claire, her eyes softening in a way that made me ache. She never complained, but I could feel the quiet absence where Claire's presence used to be. Then came the family Christmas Eve dinner, our first big holiday gathering since the wedding. I told myself I'd go, if only for Hannah's sake. Maybe the season would thaw the distance between us. Maybe we could start to heal. But as I was setting the table that morning, my phone rang. It was Claire. "Hey, Kate," she began, her voice almost cautious. "I wanted to talk to you about tonight. Richard's parents are coming, and they have certain expectations. They think the dinner should be more of an adult gathering. I hope you understand, but it might be better if Hannah didn't come this year." I froze. "You're asking me to leave my daughter home on Christmas Eve?" "It's just one night," she said quickly. "They like things quiet, and Hannah's still." "Still what?" I snapped. "Still not good enough for their standard? Still too young to sit at a table with her family?" Her silence on the other end spoke volumes. "Claire, you've known Hannah her entire life. You've celebrated every birthday with her. You've sat on the floor and played board games with her for hours. And now you're acting like she's some stranger who doesn't belong. Do you even hear yourself?" "I'm trying to make things work with my husband's family," she said softly, almost pleading. "You don't know how much pressure they put on me." "I know exactly how much pressure they put on you," I replied. "And I know you're choosing them over us." The call ended with no resolution, and I sat there for a long time, my phone still in my hand, my pulse pounding in my ears. Hannah walked in just then, humming to herself, holding a tray of cookies she'd baked for the dinner. I had to swallow the lump in my throat before I could speak. "Change of plans," I told her gently. "We're having our own Christmas Eve at home." She blinked in surprise. "Why?" "Because family means being welcome. And if someone can't see that, then we celebrate without them." So we did. We lit candles and played Christmas music, baked more cookies, and watched It's a Wonderful Life under a pile of blankets. It wasn't the Christmas I'd envisioned, but it was ours, warm, peaceful, and full of love. And yet, I couldn't help but feel the growing canyon between me and Claire widening with every passing hour. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a string of text messages from family members. Some were sympathetic, others accusing me of overreacting. One from my mother read, "I wish you'd just come. You're making this harder than it needs to be." But the one that stuck with me came from Melissa. "Claire looked tired last night. And honestly, Richard's family, they're not easy. It's like she's walking on eggshells." That image stayed with me, my strong, confident sister, bending herself to fit into a mold someone else had made. It made me angry, but it also made me sad. In the days after Christmas, I started putting together a plan not for revenge in the traditional sense, but for something quieter, more deliberate. I began going through old boxes of photos, pulling out pictures of Claire and me from childhood, shots of her and Hannah at the beach, snapshots from holidays, and random little moments that captured who we used to be before all this. I wanted her to see it. To remember it. When I finished, I placed them in a leather-bound photo album, each page a reminder of the love and loyalty we'd shared. On the inside cover, I wrote a note: "Family isn't about rules or standards. It's about showing up, always." I wrapped it in simple brown paper and tied it with twine. I didn't tell Hannah what I was planning, only that I had a gift for Claire I'd deliver myself. When I arrived at Claire's house a few days before New Year's, she looked surprised to see me. Richard wasn't home, and she invited me in with a cautious smile. We sat at her kitchen table, the photo album between us. "What's this?" she asked, untying the twine. "Just something I thought you might like," I said. She opened the cover, and for a long time, she didn't speak. She flipped through the pages slowly, her fingers lingering over certain pictures. Her eyes began to glisten, and I saw her swallow hard. "I forgot about this day," she whispered, pointing to a photo of her holding Hannah on her 5th birthday. "She was so excited about that cake." "And you were the one who made it," I reminded her. She kept turning the pages, the silence stretching between us. Finally, she closed the album and looked at me. "Kate. I'm sorry. I don't even know how I let it get this far." I met her gaze. "I do. You wanted to be accepted. I understand that. But you can't lose yourself or your family just to fit into someone else's version of perfection." her voice wavered. I think I already have. That moment was the first crack in the wall she'd built since meeting Richard's family. I didn't know if it would crumble completely, but I knew I'd planted something, a reminder of who she really was and who we were together. It would take time, but I was willing to wait. Because this wasn't just about me. It was about Hannah, and about making sure she knew her worth in a world that sometimes measures people by all the wrong things. And as the new year approached, I had no idea just how much that little crack was going to change everything. The new year rolled in quietly. I didn't hear from Claire for the first few weeks of January, but I didn't press her. The photo album had landed heavier than I expected. It wasn't just a gift, it was a mirror she couldn't avoid, showing her every piece of herself she'd slowly traded away. I figured she needed time to sit with it. Hannah and I carried on with our routines. School for her, work for me, dinners in our cozy kitchen, guitar practice in the evenings. Life felt stable, but the absence of my sister still stung like a faint bruise you forget about until something brushes against it. I tried to push it aside, telling myself we'd already done what was necessary, we'd drawn our boundaries and lived by them. Then, one rainy Friday afternoon in early February, Claire called. Her voice was shaky, like she'd been crying. "Kate, can we meet?" "Just us?" she asked. I paused for a moment, not wanting to let my guard down too quickly. "Where?" "Your place. Please. I don't want Richard to be around for this." When she arrived, she looked smaller somehow, like she'd been carrying something too heavy for too long. Her usually immaculate hair was pulled back in a loose bun, and she wore no makeup. She sat at my kitchen table, staring at her hands for a long moment before she finally looked up. "I've been awful," she said simply. I didn't rush to comfort her. I just let the silence stretch. "I let them change me," she continued. "Richard's parents have this way of making everything about what's proper and what's not. At first, I thought I could adapt without losing myself. But every time I gave in to one of their rules, it got easier to give in to the next. I told myself it was just part of being married, part of blending families. But after you gave me that album," her voice cracked. "I saw what I'd done. I saw how I treated you and Hannah. And I hated myself for it." I felt my chest tighten. "Then why did it take you this long to say something?" "Because I didn't know if you'd even want to hear it," she admitted. "I'd been so afraid that I'd broken something we couldn't fix." "You hurt us," I said, my voice even. "You hurt Hannah. She's 15, Claire. That kind of rejection stays with you." Tears welled in her eyes. "I know. And I'm so sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want to make things right. I told Richard I'm done with their rules about who's acceptable at family events. I told him Hannah will always be part of my life, no matter what anyone thinks." I studied her face, searching for any hint of insincerity. But there was none, just the raw, vulnerable truth of someone who had finally woken up from a long sleep. "Hannah will need to hear that from you," I said finally. "I know," she nodded. "Could I talk to her now?" I called Hannah into the kitchen. She appeared in the doorway, cautious but curious. Claire stood, her hands trembling slightly. "Hannah," she began, "I owe you the biggest apology of my life. I hurt you, and I made you feel like you didn't belong. That was wrong. You are my niece, and I love you. I will never, ever let anyone make me forget that again." For a moment, Hannah just stood there, her expression unreadable. Then she stepped forward and hugged her aunt tightly. "I missed you," she whispered. "I missed you too," Claire replied, her voice breaking. It wasn't some grand cinematic reconciliation, but it was real. It was a start. Over the next few months, I watched Claire slowly reclaim herself. She started setting boundaries with Richard's family, declining invitations to events where she felt she'd have to compromise her values. She invited Hannah to lunch, to shopping trips, to movie nights. It wasn't about making up for lost time, it was about building something stronger, brick by brick. And Richard? He didn't love the changes, but Claire held her ground. I think he realized she wasn't going to bend anymore. If he wanted to keep her, he'd have to accept her family too. By the time the next holiday season rolled around, the air between us was different, lighter, and freer. On Christmas Eve, we all sat around my dining table, the smell of roasted chicken filling the air. Hannah was there, of course, laughing at one of Claire's stories. Richard was there too, quieter than usual but not unkind. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like the fractures had started to heal. Later that night, after the dishes were cleared and the lights dimmed, Claire pulled me aside. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For showing me what matters when I've forgotten." I squeezed her hand. "That's what family's for. Not to fit some stranger's idea of perfect but to remind you who you really are." I knew things wouldn't always be smooth. Families aren't fairy tales. But we'd weathered something big, and we'd come out of it with a deeper understanding of each other. And most importantly, Hannah had seen, in real time, that love isn't about convenience or compliance, it's about commitment. That was the quiet revenge I'd wanted all along. Not to humiliate Claire, but to make her see what she'd lost and give her the choice to fight for it again. And she had. So when I look back on that adults-only wedding now, I don't just see the hurt. I see the turning point. I see the moment our family decided that no outside standard, no matter how polished or sophisticated, could ever define our worth. And that's a standard I'll keep for the rest of my life. Moral lesson. Family shul. Ent. Sometimes, the strongest stand you can take is a quiet one, refusing to participate in a version of family that leaves people behind. To anyone listening who's ever been made to feel like they didn't meet someone else's standard, know this: you are enough exactly as you are. Your worth isn't up for debate, and the people who truly love you will never make you earn your seat at the table. If this story touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more tales filled with moral lessons, love, and the sweet satisfaction of justice served in the most meaningful way. And in the comments, tell me what's the most important standard you hold for your own family?